Wow, I feel like I'm gonna tell a similar story here. Cool, so my name is Kevin Eisenfrats. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Contraline. We're a medical device company here in town, UVA spin-out company, and I'm actually gonna talk about my journey from student to founder and then now to CEO, which I think is a little different than what you're hearing as just as a founder. And so we're gonna differentiate that a little bit. But first, I wanna talk a little about who am I? And I've been getting this question a lot from people. Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a scientist? Who are you? And so, I don't know if I can define it, but definitely a biotech entrepreneur. But I really like to think I'm also a scientist. I graduated from UVA and I'm really interested in biomedical engineering. But I've really discovered that I also love inventing things. And so I don't think I can ever stop that. And then finally, more recently, I am calling myself an executive. And so I want to talk a little about my journey, all the way actually from high school. And so I went to high school in the Academy of Allied Health and Science in Neptune, New Jersey. And it was a medically focused high school. So that's me right there, first year freshman in high school. And it was a really interesting high school. Some of you might know TJ and Nova. This was kind of similar, a magnet school. And so we got really cool opportunities in that high school. I mean, it was a bunch of literally, 15, 16, 17-year-olds that knew they wanted to be doctors at that age. And one of the things was I became EMT certified. And also, as part of our senior year in high school, we got to shadow any doctor in the county. And I chose to go to the OR, and that was pretty eye-opening. I got to see hundreds of surgeries in a semester, ranging from everything from hysterectomies to eye surgery, etc. It was actually during that time that I discovered my interest in reproductive biology. And so I was talking to a lot of OBGYNs and surgeons and discovered I might want to be an OBGYN one day. And there's a picture from my senior year with a bunch of my high school friends and what we wanted to be when we grew up. Maybe I want to deliver babies, maybe I want to help couples get pregnant that are infertile, or maybe I want to be a surgeon one day. And so in 2010, I actually applied to the UVA School of Engineering. Now, why engineering? Well, it was during that time that I also discovered that there were a lot of problems in reproductive biology that still needed to be solved. And I think that engineering could help solve them. So like IVF, it's so expensive and it's so painful for the female patient, but yet the success rate is so low. And so there's things that I think engineering, especially biomedical engineering, could help. So in 2010, I applied to School of Engineering, and here was the essay. It took me a lot of digging to find this one. If you were given $10,000 budget and the opportunity to build a small team of talented, motivated individuals, what would you propose to accomplish? It's kind of strange that they're basically asking, if you were an entrepreneur, what would you do? So I wrote about the male pill. And why the male pill? I frankly can say I have no idea why my 17-year-old self was thinking about why there is no male birth control. But I knew that it didn't exist, and I started doing research, and my essay was, if I had $10,000, what would I fund that could accelerate the development of the first male pill? So let's put that aside. But I got to UVA, and two things happened that were really important in my life, and Payam, this is going to be a huge shout out to your story as well. So the first one is that I discovered a new major called nanomedicine engineering. So Payam talked a little about this. This was a new program. I think it was 3 or 4 years old when I got here. And like I said, I wanted to do biomedical engineering. But they were telling me, here's this new program that is biomedical engineering mixed with chemistry, mixed with material science. And you basically take classes in all three. And it's got a focus on drug delivery and really cool stuff that's at the cutting edge. And so I'm the type of person, if there's something new presented to me, I just go for it. And even though it was the major that was kind of second place to BME, I wanted to make it the major that was first place in the School of Engineering. And so that was really important to me. And the second thing was I was looking to do cutting edge research. I started looking my first year of college, and I was introduced to this guy named Dr. John Hare. So that was extremely important, that connection to me, just like Mark was for Payam. So Dr. Hare was a professor in cell biology, urology, and biomedical engineering at UVA. But more importantly, he was actually the world's leading reproductive entrepreneur, if I can even coin that. And so what do I mean by that? He started 4 companies out of his lab, all having to do with reproductive biology. He was doing entrepreneurship at UVA 20 years before any other professor was doing it. And to be completely frank, he was kind of getting shunned for it. But I wanted to talk about one of the products that came out of the lab just to bring this all together, is a product called Sperm Check. So this is a at-home fertility test for guys to check their sperm counts. It's approved in 19 different countries in the world, Walgreens, CVS. You go to the CVS on the corner and they will have Dr. Hare's product. It took 15 years to make a discovery in a lab and then create this diagnostic test that's now found in every single chain store. I think that's huge. So many couples have really benefited from this product. So I got mentored by this reproductive biologist and scientist and entrepreneur. And for the next 3 years, I just did research because I still wanted to go to medical school and I wanted to get experience. And so I spent years in Dr. Hare's lab doing research on uterine cancer. I won't get too deep into that, but it was around immunotherapy. And then also, I really wanted experience to go back to my reproductive side, and so I did some research at the NIH in vitro fertilization. And then one day, my 3rd year, I got this email. And it was from a guy who's sitting right there, named Alex, who, as Liz said, all of you should know. And it basically said, hey, are you interested in biotech entrepreneurship? We can teach you how to win this competition for $20,000. And I was kind of just, it piqued my curiosity, and so I met up with Alex, Sean, and Ian that were starting this program called BioTrep for biotech entrepreneurship. And they were the ones that really had to convince me to come up with an idea. And I was struggling. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't like this. I was not going to be a founder. I had no interest in entrepreneurship, no classes in entrepreneurship taken, and I could not think of an idea. And it was right around, I think it was the month of December, I was going on a skiing trip, doing some research, and I found out that Dr. Hare, my mentor, applied for this grant to come up with a non-surgical sterilant for cats and dogs. And it's this big problem, and there was a $20 million grant out there for whoever can do it, and it's never been solved. In fact, he got funded to do it, and it didn't even work. And so I really wanted to solve that problem. And so the company I came up with, or the idea, was Contraline. And what Contraline was originally our big idea was to replace neutering with a procedure that was non-hormonal, non-surgical, and reversible. For those that know Contraline now, that might sound a little familiar. But this was the original logo. So I assembled a team of a couple of students and me, and we decided to start applying for these competitions. This was all while I was doing research in a lab. That was my 4th year thesis, and also I was studying for the MCAT. But this was the original Contraline student team, and we won a few competitions. First place in the Entrepreneurship Cup, Darden Business Plan Competition, which doesn't exist anymore, I believe. The ACC Inventor Prize, we were the first team, UVA team, to compete in that. We won 2nd place, and also we were finalists in the Collegiate Inventors Competition. And in total, we won $45,000 to work on this idea. And we didn't have data at the time. We didn't have a lab. So this was the funding that got us to actually put the money into the Dr. Hare's lab, get some lab space, and actually start doing experiments to see if this idea works. By the way, this is like 5x smaller than what Ashwin and Payam and the rest of the students or the entrepreneurs are doing now. So this was a lot of money for us. And then we got into the Darden, into the UVA iLab, which is the incubator here at UVA. And this was a really important moment for me because this is where I started transitioning from student to founder. And I was learning about entrepreneurship for the first time. I had students working with me, and we were just trying to figure it out. What could we do to progress this with the money we had? So we were doing some R&D to get some proof of concept in Dr. Hare's lab. We were doing some market research to figure out if this idea actually could work. And then we were building a team. And I have to say that iLab was the best place to mess up. It just gave you the ability to screw up and to learn how to fail, but also learn how to pivot and do your next, and then do the next big thing. And so that is where you probably are wondering, why are you doing market research? You're engineers, just go build a product. Well, we called up 500 veterinarians and pet owners and shelters and zoos, and we're like, hey, do you want this alternative to neutering? And pet owners were like, I just got a new puppy, and I was like, they might be like, yeah, this sounds great. This sounds a lot better than neutering. It's so humane. And then vets straight up said, no, we will never do this. There was one vet in the entire country that said, maybe I would do this, and he still works with me to this day. So that idea didn't work, but something really interesting happened, which there's a lesson here, is listen to people. All the vets and pet owners we were talking to said, wow, I don't want that for my dog, but I want that for myself. And women were saying, why doesn't this exist for my husband or my boyfriend? And so it was a really natural pivot. I had my mentor, I had Dr. Hare, my co-founder, in my ears saying, we need to go to humans. We need to transition this product to humans. And so that is how Contraline became a male contraceptive company. And that's what we're developing, the first long-lasting, non-hormonal, and reversible male contraceptive. And the problem that we're going after is pretty huge. So in 2017, 65% of the entire world used birth control. Yet only 20% relied on male forms of birth control. So you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why is there such a big dichotomy here that there's more people in the world not using contraception than there are men using contraception? And the reason that we found was men only have 3 options. It's not that they don't want to, it's that their options are really limited. So the 3 options, you probably know, condoms, which have actually a pretty high failure rate if you don't use them perfectly, and also a really high dissatisfaction rate. And then vasectomy, which requires surgery and it's permanent. And then finally, withdrawal, or the pull-out method, which is basically a coin toss and has a 20% failure rate. So I'm not a doctor, can't give anyone any advice or anything here, but it's a coin toss. So there's a really big problem here, and that's why at Contraline, to sum it up really succinctly, our goal is to create the IUD for men. The intrauterine device is the long-lasting reversible contraceptive for women, and there's nothing like that for men. In fact, 12% of women in the US have an IUD, which is huge. And so what we're doing, our technology, is this hydrogel, this gel that we implant into the vas deferens, or the tubes that transport sperm. And so we plug up this vas deferens with our gel, the sperm get blocked by it. It's really effective, non-hormonal, and then we could dissolve that gel later on in time. And so that's very simply put, the technology. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but I want to talk a little about our progress, because for a lot of people are shocked when they hear that Contraline's a 3-year-old company, and that includes all the pivots that we've done along the way. So I graduated in 2015. We started the company. We were in the iLab, and in 2016, we got our first proof of concept with our first generation hydrogel. So this was our old formulation. And I'm not going to go too into technical details on what that was, but we basically said, yeah, this is pretty feasible. I think we can make this work. And then we filed our first patent on that, and that was still at the lab at UVA. We actually licensed that technology from UVA. And we got accepted into Y Combinator's fellowship program, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, but it was this program that we got a lot of the benefits from Y Combinator, including mentorship and connections to investors, which was huge. And we raised our first round of funding, $680,000 from angel investors, locally and some in Silicon Valley as well. And at that point in time, we hired our first 3 employees, and all of them were working on the R&D side. So in 2017, that was probably the biggest year for Contraline. We took that money and started working on our next generation hydrogel, our next generation technology that we thought was going to be 10x better than the first. And turns out it was true. So during that time, we filed 5 patents, and that was all owned by Contraline. We acquired 4,600 square feet of lab and office space here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So we outfitted an entire lab to do the medical device development. And we raised we raised $2.25 million led by Founders Fund, which is Peter Thiel VC firm out in Silicon Valley. And that was really due to our connections at Y Combinator that started that. And because of that, we got to expand to 7 employees. And then in 2018, just so far, we're transitioning our product into preclinical stage. What does that mean? Well, we have our formulation locked down. We met with the FDA. We had a really successful meeting, and we're now about to start the trials in a few weeks where we're putting our device into large animals, and if it works, we're going to humans. So that's going to be the biggest odd job for me personally, is to see our product impact lives and be in clinical trials. On top of that, we have 11 patents now. One just got issued, so that was really big news for us. And then we fully operated the lab, just something, this is my personal view. As a scientist and engineer, a lot of biotech companies these days are outsourcing things or doing things where it's called virtually. We're the exact opposite. So we said we will not believe if our product works if we can't build it ourselves and test it ourselves. So about 98% of our R&D is done in-house. And then finally, we're closing an additional $3 million round of funding right now, and we're now 9 employees. So I think that this and next year for Contraline are going to be really, really big milestones. And so just so you can see how much you can grow. So I went from student to founder, and now I want to talk a little bit about that transition to a CEO. When you're a founder, you're scrappy. You do everything yourself. You're trying to be resourceful and trying to get a team together and use professors and advisors to help you. But when you're a CEO, you're no longer trying to be scrappy anymore. You're trying to manage a team. And that's a totally different experience. You can't do everything yourself, and so you need the help, and you need to learn how to become a better leader. And so how to step back and let people that are better than you do things a certain way. So that was really hard for me. Not gonna lie, it took about 9 to 12 months for me to make that transition. But now I have an incredible team that's just really, really good at what they do, and I don't think we would have gotten this far without them. So each day I'm learning how to be a better CEO, and really run this company and make it successful. So now I wanted to give just a couple of pieces of advice for you guys in the crowd. And the first one is, why or when or should you even become a founder? So there's 4 things that I think could spark you to become a founder. The first one is you have an innate calling, this passion to solve a problem. And this goes back to my essay on the male pill. I think I've been thinking about this for years, and my passion in reproductive biology, I really wanted to solve this problem, and to be honest, I won't stop until I solve this problem, whether it's Contraline or a different company. And so this is this innate calling that you have to solve a problem. And then the next one is, you have a skill that makes you the right person to solve the problem. So maybe it's engineering, maybe it's medicine for the speaker we're gonna hear next. Or for me, I think it was a combination of the reproductive biology experience I got in the lab with the engineering education I got. And so people ask me, sorry for the comm schoolers in the room, why didn't you go to the comm school if you're an entrepreneur? And to be honest, I don't think I would have been able to start this biotech company if I didn't have that knowledge of working in a lab and getting my engineering degree. And the third thing is you identify a good problem by working somewhere. So sometimes you could be at a tech company, and sometimes it's better to spend a couple years working at a different company to learn what their problems are internally. And for me, it was working in Dr. Harris' lab, where they spent 20 years trying to create a male contraceptive to learn how big that problem was and what didn't work in the past. And then finally, you might have that problem yourself, and we won't go there. So a couple other things. Entrepreneurship is about building relationships. Highly recommend getting a co-founder. Dr. Hare passed away 2 years ago now, and I really miss him. It's lonely being a sole founder, but I highly recommend finding a best friend, a mentor, and someone that could be your co-founder that you could go back and forth on ideas with. Second is advisors. So this guy, Evan Edwards, was my mentor at the iLab, and he was the biggest win that we got from the iLab. He's been my mentor since then, and he's actually on the board of directors of Contraline. And the third thing is the team members. So this is a picture of Greg, my VP of product, myself and Nikki, my COO, right after we killed a pitch to Founders Fund. So that was pretty fun in San Francisco. And who's not on here, just because you've seen so many pictures already, are my friends who have helped along the way, who have been an inspiration, who have been support. You have your consultants and you have collaborators. So I've counted about 10 professors have helped me along the way in some way or another. And so you have this incredible resource at UVA, which is the professor and the research. Use them. Entrepreneurship is about taking risks to try something you might not be qualified for, but you have the potential to be. And so people think entrepreneurs are risk takers. They're calculated risk takers, right? So for example, I've actually written all 11 of our patents at Contraline. 3 years ago, I didn't know what a patent was. Turns out they don't really teach that, or at least I didn't take the class at UVA that taught that. And so that's something that I learned. I realized it took really quickly for me to pick up by asking all these patent lawyers, by doing a lot of Googling, and figuring out what makes a good patent. And so 3 years later, you could basically do it yourself and arm your company with something really important, like an IP portfolio. So UVA sets you up for that. At UVA, you have student governance. You learn how to be a leader just by going to this university. So really, you should not be afraid to take risks, especially as a student at this university. And guess what? 99% of the time, you're gonna become an expert at that thing that you had no idea how to do earlier. And then finally, because this is technical innovation, technology innovation, I have to say, building a product is really, really, really hard, especially from scratch. And so if you're going to build a product, then you gotta make it worthwhile and build something that's really crazy that can help a lot of people. You guys literally are in the best time right now to be alive. There's so many problems that need to be solved. And so you guys, I mean, just from biotechnology alone, CRISPR, genetic screening, etc., cancer, like you literally can work on the biggest problems. And so my takeaway for you is work on something that's going to impact a lot of people. And so just to end this presentation, I found this equation, because a lot of you are engineers, from my wannabe mentor, Elon Musk. So the equation is total usefulness is equal to U minus C times P, where U is usefulness to one person, C is how useful is the competitor or the comparable product, and then P is the number of people you can actually impact, right? So what this equation is basically saying is you want to make something that people love, or even one person loves, and it's got to be better than the competition, but also it's got to impact a lot of lives. And so if you don't have something better than the competition, you need to even reach out to even more people. And if you have something that's 10 times better than the competition, you might not need to reach out to as many. But either way, that's how you create a useful product. And so thank you very much, and I wish you guys the best of luck on your entrepreneurial journeys.